We continue our discussion on one of the very important beliefs in our theology and Islamic belief system, and that is the discussion on the Mahdawiyya and the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah. Previously, we examined from Muslim sources, whether Sunni or Shia sources, that the Mahdi is part of our belief system and that it is mandatory to believe in the Mahdi. We also examined the philosophy behind having a hidden Imam. An Imam who is absent in the sense that we don't physically see him, or when we see him we don't know him, but we mentioned some examples from the Quran, like that righteous servant of Allah who is known to be as the Khidr, who is hidden from people, from the public, yet he carried out important tasks on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also talked about falsafat al-ghayba, as they say, some reasons why we have this occultation and absence. In our discussion tonight, we will examine the historical evidence from Hadith on the birth of the Mahdi. Because there are some who have actually come forth and they've said there is no Sahih Hadith, there is no evidence that this Mahdi was born. And you, the Shia, you're basing your whole religion on someone who's hidden, and it cannot even be verified that he was born. And some of them even challenge our scholars. Show us one Sahih Hadith according to your standards that really demonstrates the Mahdi was born. Is there any evidence in our works of Hadith that shows the Mahdi was born? Because some have tried to negate that. We have a number of Hadiths that indicate the Mahdi was born. I'll share with you some of them. One Hadith is one by As-Saduq in his book Al-Khisal and also Kamal ad-Din. He narrates this Hadith. All the narrators in the chain are reliable narrators. Hence, many scholars have rendered this Hadith as a Sahih Hadith. This Hadith is from Sulaym ibn Qais al-Hilali. He narrates the Hadith from Salman Farsi rahimahullah, or Salman al-Muhammadi. He says, دخلت على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله. I went to see the Prophet. وإذا الحسين على فخذيه. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in the lap of the Prophet. وهو يقبل عينيه ويلثم فاه. The Prophet was kissing him on his forehead between his eyes, and the Prophet was also embracing him. وهو يقول أنت سيد ابن سيد. You are a master, the son of a master. أنت إمام ابن إمام. You are an imam, a leader, and the son of an imam. أبو الأئمة. You're also the father of the imams. أنت حجة ابن حجة. You're the proof, the son of the proof of God. أبو حجج تسعة. You're the father of 9 proofs of God. Min sulbik, from your progeny. Here's the word that proves Imam al-Mahdi must be born. تَاسِعُهُمْ قَائِمُهُمْ. Look at this word. The 9th of your descendants is the Qa'im, and that's the reference to the Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah. Question: how does this Hadith from the Prophet ﷺ prove the Mahdi was born? How? Because the Hadith is not saying he is born and someone saw him. How does this Hadith from the Prophet prove beyond doubt the Mahdi must have been born? How?
9 descendants, that means it takes a while to be born, but not so long that he's not yet born.
So in our time, how can we prove that the Mahdi has been born using a Hadith like this? Yes.
9 descendants, does it mean like one after another?
Yes, he says the 9th of your descendants.
That's like, isn't that proof that it's like at time 1400 years ago, if 9 were born after each other?
Exactly. The 8th descendant of Imam al-Hussein is who? Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. If the ninth descendant is the son of Al-Askari, Imam Al-Askari was martyred, he passed away. Imam Al-Askari is not alive, he passed away. And the Qa'im must be the ninth, so he must be the son of Al-Askari. If Imam Al-Askari was martyred and he passed away, then the Mahdi must have been born. Because it's impossible to conceive that the father died 1,000 years ago and then 1,000 years later the son comes out of nowhere. That doesn't make sense. So when the Prophet tells us he's the ninth, automatically he's telling us that before Al-Askari dies, he must be born. That in itself is evidence. How do you feel about this argument here? If you have any counter arguments or objections, let's hear them. Do you see that this is clear evidence from the Prophet that the Mahdi must be born? Because if he's the ninth, he's the son of the eighth. Well, the eighth died, he passed away, came shaheed. That means the ninth must have been born while the eighth was alive, because he was his father. And it really is inconceivable to think that God will have a hujjah 1,000 years before, and then sometime in the future his son is born. That doesn't make sense. Absolutely makes no sense.
So what's their argument that the Mahdi is not born yet?
Why do they?
Whose argument?
Other school of thought.
Well, right now we're not even talking about other schools of thought. We're talking about in our own standards. See, there are some who may have, deflected from the Shia faith. Like a famous figure is Ahmad al-Katib, if you've heard of his name. There are some today, you'll find even in the seminaries, someone will come out and say, okay, you Shia Maraja, according to your sources, we're not talking about Sunni sources, Shia sources, you don't have a Sahih Hadith that states what? That the Mahdi has been born. How are you believing in him? Well, this is one Hadith. This is one Hadith. It proves that the Mahdi must have been born.
Do we have more?
Yes, this is just one. There is one small issue with this Hadith. That's why I'll share with you another Hadith. But the reason why I shared it with you is because it's a very common Hadith. There's one problem in the chain. All the narrators are Sahih, they're thiqah, they're reliable. But there's one glitch over here. And Hamad, see, we get to the part where the chain is the following. And Abdullah ibn Miskan, and Aban ibn Taghlib, and Sulaym ibn Qais.
Okay.
The question is, Aban ibn Taghlib, who was the companion of Al-Imam Al-Sadiq and Al-Baqir alayhim salam, how does he narrate this hadith from Sulaym ibn Qais? There seems to be something missing here, right? Okay, some scholars have raised this concern. We're like, fine. Let's consider this chain to be an invalid chain. We have a better one. We have a better chain in the book of Al-Kafi, in the book of Al-Shaykh Al-Saduq, Al-Khisal, and a number of other books that demonstrate this hadith is a Sahih hadith. Let me share with you one chain. Al-Shaykh Al-Saduq, in his book Al-Khisal, he says, I got this hadith from my father. His father was a scholar, reliable. حدثنا Ali ibn Ibrahim. Ali ibn Ibrahim, is he reliable or no? He's reliable. An Ibrahim, an Abi, his father, Hashim. Was he reliable? He was reliable. An Muhammad ibn Abi Umair, top companion of the Imams, reliable. An Sa'id ibn Ghazawan, reliable. An Abi Basir, an Abi Ja'far alayhi salam, from Al-Imam Al-Baqer, yakun, look at the text of the hadith, yakunu tis'atu a'immatin ba'da al-Husayn. There will be 9 Imams after Al-Husayn ibn Ali. Tasi'uhum qa'imuhum. The 9th one is the qa'im. Some scholars have used this hadith. Question. This hadith here, can we use it as evidence that the Mahdi is born?
No.
It's not as clear as the previous one, but we still can. How? See, the Prophet says there are Imams, 9 Imams after Hussein. The 9th one is the Mahdi. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean when the 9th could come. Maybe the 8th one dies, and then 1,000 years later, the 9th one comes. But is that possible? Based on what we discussed in our last class.
No.
There must be an Imam in every one.
Okay.
in every era, in every time. So if the eighth one passed away and we only have one left, he has to be alive because you can't have a gap. So this requires a little bit more thought to establish that the Mahdi has been born. But let me share with you the version of Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi narrates this hadith from Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Balal. He says, خرج إلي من أبي محمد قبل مضيه بسنتين. Who's Abu Muhammad? The Imams had kunyas, they had titles. Who's Al-Imam Abu Muhammad? Al-Imam Al-Askari alayhi salam. Al-Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari is known as Abu Muhammad. He says 2 years before Imam Al-Askari passed away, I heard this from him. يخبرني بالخلف من بعده. 2 years before he passed away, he informed me of the Imam after him, meaning the Mahdi. ثم خرج إلي من قبل مضيه بثلاثة أيام يخبرني بالخلف من بعده. And then 3 days before he passed away, he also informed me that this is the Imam after me. This is a Sahih hadith, solid chain, from Al-Imam Al-Askari that the Mahdi was born. He confirms to Ali and Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Bilal, he confirms to him that the Khalaf, the one who comes after him, is there. He's been born. So this is one hadith. Another hadith is also mentioned in the book of Al-Kafi. It has a solid chain. Muhammad ibn Yahya and Ahmad ibn Ishaq and Abi Hashim al-Ja'fari. All three reliable top narrators. قلت لأبي محمد, I said to Al-Imam Al-Askari, جعلت جلالتك تمنعني من مسألتك فتأذن لي أن أسألك. He says, your glory, your high status prevents me from asking you directly. But you give me permission to ask you a very important question? He says, yes, ask. فقلت يا سيدي هل لك ولد? My master, do you have a son? A child? فقال نعم. He said, yes, I do. فقلت فإن بك حدث فأين أسأل عنه? He says, if something, God forbid, happens to you, where will he be? Where can I ask about him? The Imam alayhi salam says, Bil Medina. In the city of Medina. The Imam now was in Samarra. He says in Medina. Now the reason why he says Medina is because Imam al-Mahdi, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah, when he was a boy, his grandmother, the mother of Imam al-Askari, would take him to Medina. Sometimes to protect him, he would go with his grandmother to the city of Medina. So this is a Sahih hadith that Imam al-Askari is confirming, my son is the one who's after me, and if something happens to me, you can find him in Medina. It's a Sahih hadith according to the standards of our scholars. That proves that the Imam alayhi salam was born. So we have a number of hadiths that confirm the ninth one is the Mahdi and he must have been born. Any questions on these categories of hadiths? Yes.
See, why are we going through all these if this is our sources only? Because there's detailed description of how Imam Mahdi was born and his mother. It's a long story and it's according to our sources.
See, the reason why I brought this up is because there are some today who are going by the rigid classification of the hadith, sahih, muwathaq, majhul, da'if. They're saying by the standards of the modern scholars who have this classification, we want a hadith that's sahih. And what they mean by sahih is that the chain is known to be narrated by reliable narrators. Some of those stories that you mentioned, we'll mention them, they might not have such a chain. Maybe the As-Saduq narrates it, he doesn't tell us who his source is. So they're like, okay, you believe a Shaykh As-Saduq is reliable, you follow him. I want evidence. That's why we're bringing hadiths that are sahih. No one can argue and dispute. These narrators were top narrators and reliable. Remember, for those of you who've attended the science of hadith, we mentioned that one way to verify the authenticity of a hadith is through what? Through the chain. But that's not the only way. There are other ways of verifying that a hadith is sahih. There are some people today, they don't accept that. No. I want a hadith with a solid chain. Okay, here are hadiths with solid chains. Some of those stories, they may not have that chain that these people are looking for. So that's why we mentioned that. Here is another hadith that I would like to share with you. In the book of Kafi, he mentions a hadith from Al-Imam Al-Askari alayhi salam when Az-Zubayri was killed. Az-Zubayri was an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt, and he gave Al-Imam Al-Askari a hard time. An evil man. The Imam alayhi salam even cursed him. The Imam said, هذا جزاء من اجترأ على الله في أوليائه. Because he got killed, the Imam alayhi salam says this is the fate of those who fight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the friends of Allah. يزعم أنه يقتلني وليس لي عقب. Basically, as Zubayri said, you know what? I'm going to kill Al-Hasan Al-Askari without giving him time to have children. That way I end this imamah business. This is what Az-Zubayri claimed. He got killed before he could harm the imam. So he says, you know, we really thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he got him out of the way. فَكَيْفَ رَأَى قُدْرَةَ اللَّهِ فِي. Now did he see the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? وَوُلِدَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. Imam al-Askari was given a child. سَمَّاهُ Mim Ha Mim Dal Muhammad. We'll talk about why they used to abbreviate it like that. في سنة 56 و200. Year 256, or some reports say 255, depending on how they counted the Hijri date. So this is evidence that the Imam alayhi salam was born. Now, Al-Kulayni narrates this hadith from Mu'alla ibn Muhammad. Mu'alla ibn Muhammad, some scholars don't accept his hadith, meaning he's weak. Well, Al-Shaykh al-Saduq narrates this same hadith in Ikmal al-Din with a solid chain. Same exact hadith with a solid chain. So we do have a solid chain for this hadith. Are there any eyewitnesses? Anyone who saw the boy? Because remember, the Imam had to protect the life of the young Mahdi. So most people did not see him. The Imam would not allow people to see Al-Imam al-Mahdi. But did anyone see him? Yes. Al-Amri, he witnesses that he saw the Mahdi. I'll share this hadith with you. This is a hadith that has a Sahih sanad. It's mentioned in the book of Kafi. Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Himyari, one of the companions of the Imam, and he was really a scholar, a righteous companion. He says, اجتمعت أنا والشيخ أبو عمرو رحمه الله عند أحمد ibn Ishaq. He says, me and al-Shaykh Abu Amr. Who's al-Shaykh Abu Amr? He is the first deputy and Safir and ambassador for Imam al-Mahdi in Ghaybat al-Sughra. Remember, the Imam had 4 who represented him. Al-Amri was the first one. He says, I met Al-Amri in the house of Ahmad ibn Ishaq. Ahmad ibn Ishaq, he pointed to me. He told me, ask him about the Khalaf. Ask this representative of the Mahdi, who's a Safir al-Awwal, the first Safir. Ask him if he's seen the Mahdi. Ask him this question. So, Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Himyari, he says, فَقُلْتُ لَهُ يَا أَبَا عَمْرٍ. I need to ask you something that's very important. And it's not because I have doubts. I'm not asking you because I have doubts. My deen, my i'tiqad, my religion is that there must be a hujjah on earth. So don't think that by asking you I'm having any doubts. And basically, I'm just like Ibrahim alayhi salam, who said, oh Allah, show me how you revive the dead. قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. Allah said, why, you don't believe that I revive the dead? قَالَ بَلَى وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. Yes, but I want my heart to be, at rest, to feel fully confident and certain. I do believe. I don't have 1% doubt. But I just want to feel, settled in my heart. Just like Ibrahim said that, I want to ask you. Otherwise, I firmly believe that there must be a hujjah. He's going to stay till 40 days before the day of judgment. Then when Allah wants to make the day of judgment befall, He removes His hujjah, and then the punishment will befall the people of the earth, and the day of judgment will happen. He's saying to Al-Amri, who's the first Safir of Imam al-Mahdi, this thing. He tells him, ask anything that you have. What's your question? So, he tells him also something very interesting. He tells him, oh Amri, let me tell you something. The reason why I trust you so much is because Al-Imam Al-Hadi and Al-Imam Al-Askari praised you. We heard directly from them saying how reliable you are. And he mentions the hadith, Al-Amri wabnuhu thiqatan, فَمَا أَدَّيَا إِلَيْكَ عَنِّي فَعَنِّي يُؤَدِّيَانِ. Al-Amri and his son, who's the second Safir, they are thiqatan, two trustworthy people. The Imam Imam Al-Askari said, whatever they say to you, it's on my behalf. That's something rarely an Imam would say. Giving someone the green light. Anything that this person says and does, it's reflecting me. They're doing it on my behalf. Everything they say, everything they do. So Al-Himyari is telling the first Safir, I've heard this praise from my Imams about you, so I trust you. Answer me my question. He says, Al-Amri, when he heard these words from me, he fell to the ground in sujood. And he was really so moved. فَخَرَّ أَبُو عَمْ سَاجِدًا وَبَكَى. He cried when he heard the words of the Imams praising him. He says, Sal, ask me, what do you want to ask? I told him, أنت رأيت الخلف من بعد أبي محمد عليه السلام. Did you see the Mahdi? Just tell us, be honest with us. We believe, remember, we don't have doubts. Even if you say you didn't see him, we still are of the belief that God must have a hujjah somewhere on earth. But we just want to know, did you see him with your own eyes? He says, إِي وَاللَّهِ وَرَقَبَتُهُ مِثْلُ ذَا وَأَوْمَأَ بِيَدِهِ. He says, I swear by Allah, I saw him. I saw his neck, just as I see you here in front of me. I have seen the hujjah. The Mahdi, I've seen him myself. So this is a solid hadith from who? Al-Himyari, who's reliable, top companion, from Al-Amri, who was 100% trustworthy. And he is saying, I saw the Mahdi. So this is a Sahih hadith that confirms that someone saw the Mahdi. He says, okay, I have a second question. He tells him, what's the second question? فَبَقِيَتْ وَاحِدَةً فَقَالَ لِي هَاتْ قُلْتُ فَالْإِسْمِ. What's his name? What's the name of this hujjah? قال محرم عليكم أن تسألوا عن ذلك ولا أقول هذا من عندي فليس لي أن أحلل ولا أحرم ولكن عنه عليه السلام. There's an interesting discussion about the Mahdi at the time. During the Ghaybat al-Sughra specifically, it was prohibited to mention his name. The name of Al-Imam al-Mahdi is the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His first name is the same name. But the Shias were prohibited from mentioning his name. And in fact, even when they wanted to write his name, they would not write Muhammad in a continuous way. They would write it symbolically using symbols like an M, and then they have the letter Ha unattached, detached from it, and then the Mim, and then the Dal. So they would not write the name of the Imam alayhi salam. So when Al-Amri was asked, what is the name of this Mahdi? He says, I am not allowed to mention his name. Why? And by the way, early scholars, even until today there are some scholars, but most scholars throughout history have said you're not allowed to mention the Mahdi by name until he reappears. What is the reason behind that? He, in this hadith, Al-Amri explains. He says the Sultan, the Abbasid Caliph, he is under the impression that Imam al-Askari died without a son. Well, why? Because remember, they stormed the house of Imam al-Askari. They stormed his house, as we shall see later, to find if any woman was pregnant, if there was any child, and that's when the Ghaiba officially started. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had Imam al-Mahdi miraculously go into occultation. So when the Khalifa says, okay, there's no son, then that means he left without a son. Now, the Khalifa was aware that the Shia have some belief in some Mahdi. But to him, he did not know whether this Mahdi really existed or not. It's a vague idea, okay, it's some superstitions that they believe in. Now, if the Khalifa hears the spies would inform him that the Shias are actually mentioning him by name. Al-Amri over here says, وَإِذَا وَقَعَ الْإِسْمِ وَقَعَ الطَّلَبِ. When there is a name, the Khalifa will be certain that there is somebody out there, and that's his name. So he'll go after him to try to, kill him, or he can't kill Imam al-Mahdi. Allah will protect him. But what will he do? My personal understanding of these hadiths that prohibit the Shia from mentioning the name of the Mahdi is the following. It wasn't really the concern about the Mahdi himself. Allah will miraculously protect him. The concern was about what? The Shia. If at the time of the Abbasid Caliph, let's say I mentioned the Mahdi, the Mahdi, and that's his name. His name is Muhammad. The Khalifa would summon me. Come here. You believe in this Mahdi? You even mentioned his name. Where is he? Show me or I'll kill you. Who's this Mahdi that you're talking about? When you specify him by name, now the Khalifa has ammunition to go after you and say, okay, you know him so well that you even know his name? Show me where is he? Or I'll kill you. I'll kill all of you. So the Imams ﷺ prohibited the Shia. They're like, don't mention him by name. Keep it vague. When you keep it vague in general, the Khalifa won't come after you.
Which Khalifa was that?
At the time of Al-Ghayb al-Sughra, who was the Khalifa? Not the Mutawakkil, the Mu'tamid, or the Mahdi, which one? We'll see now. Possibly Al-Mu'tamid, but I'm not sure, so we'll double check now. Who's the one who poisoned Imam al-Askari? Was it the Mu'tamid? Yeah, Al-Mu'tamid. So that must have been the Mu'tamid, because he poisoned Imam al-Askari and he raided the house of the Imam. So Al-Mu'tamid, if he heard the Shia talking about an actual person, an actual figure, he would have went after them. So that's why it was prohibited during the ghaibas to mention the name of the Mahdi.
So Imam Mahdi was 2 years old when Imam Askari died.
No, he was 5.
He was 5.
Because Imam al-Mahdi was born year 255, 256. Al-Imam al-Askari alayhi salam was martyred year 260 of the Hijrah. That makes him around 5 years old. So the Ghayb al-Sughra started when the Imam was 5 years old.
And till how long it lasted?
It lasted for about 72, 73 years. And then after that, the major occultation started.
With the same Imam?
Yeah, same Imam, but he no longer had 4 official deputies representing him. That's how we transition from Ghaybat al-Sughra to Ghaybat al-Kubra. We'll examine that later.
See,
Yes.
I know you mentioned that Imam al-Mahdi was, his grandmother would take him to Medina.
Yes.
But what's there? How did Imam Hassan al-Askari hide Imam al-Mahdi all this time? He must have...
When we talk about, right now we'll talk about the story of Hakima alayhi salam, the aunt of the Imam. She explains how he was protected. The angels would come and protect him, and they would create a barrier where people would not see him. We'll talk about that. So the Mahdi was born, there is no doubt. By the way, we have so many hadiths. I just cited some with a solid chain. By the way, I myself have seen the work of 40 Sunni scholars who believe the Mahdi was born. I'll mention you some of them. Muhammad ibn Talha al-Shafi'i, in his kitab, Matalib al-Sa'ul, he mentions that the Mahdi was born. Muhammad ibn Yusuf ibn Muhammad al-Kanji al-Shafi'i, these are Shafi'i scholars. Number 3, Ali ibn Muhammad, who was known as Ibn Sabbagh al-Maliki. That's the 3rd Sunni scholar. Sibt ibn al-Jawzi, the 4th one. Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani, the 5th one. Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, the 6th one. Salahuddin al-Safdi, the 7th one. Amongst these 40. These are actually scholars who wrote about the Mahdi, and they were of the opinion that the Mahdi was born. Now, do you know why most Sunni scholars throughout history have rejected the idea that the Mahdi was born? See, they believe in the concept of the Mahdi. But the minute you admit the Mahdi has been born, what are you compelled to do?
Occultation.
Well, yes, occultation. That's something they probably don't like to admit. But that's fine. Al-Khidr is an occultation too. No big deal.
But the number of
If he has been born, they have no choice but to admit his father was who? Al-Imam al-Askari.
And the rest of Imam.
The minute you admit that Mahdi has been born, there is no other application other than having Al-Askari his father. Because if you believe the Mahdi is born in a particular year, okay, who's his father? He just fell out of the sky? Comes from an unknown family? No, the Prophet in Sunni hadiths, he mentions that Al-Mahdi min Wuldi, he's from Bani Hashim. In fact, he's from the line of Ali and Fatima, as we saw last week in Sunni sources. So if you admit that the Mahdi is born, and according to Sunni hadith, the Mahdi comes from the progeny of the Prophet, you have no choice but to accept that Al-Askari is his father. And if you want to accept that, you'll have to accept all the Imams. So in order to avoid this consequence, they're like, we're not sure if he's born. He's not born.
Isn't there some theory about in the Sunni brothers that the Imam Mahdi will be coming from the progeny of Imam Hassan alayhi salam?
Some do have that theory. Yes. But our question is, okay, who's his father? If you say he was born, not he will be born. Who was his father? Fine, from the progeny of Imam al-Hassan, okay, show us. Who? If you say he was born, well, you have to, how do you know he was born? You have to have a date for his birth. If you have a date for his birth, okay, who's his father? Who's his family? See, you have to attribute him to a father. And they will not find anything plausible. There's no application except Al-Askari, what the Shias believe in. Makes perfect sense. Yes, brother.
So the Sunnis often object to the Imam al-Mahdi being the 12th Imam because in their hadith they say that the Mahdi's name, Rasulullah says the Mahdi's name will be my name and his father's name will be my father's name. Has this hadith been played around and instead it should say his kunya will be my kunya?
Yes, we have seen some alterations made to this hadith. The Prophet, he says, Ismuhu ismi. His name is my name. His title is my title. But in no Sahih hadith does the Prophet say his father's name is my father's name. This is something that was added later to kind of dilute who he is and to make it confusing. The Prophet does not say that. He never says my father's name is the name of his father. That's not part of the Sahih hadiths attributed to the Prophet. He only says my name is his name. My physical appearance is similar to his physical appearance. But he never says that. This was added to make the hadith unapplicable. Yes, this was done later. In the Sahih versions that we have, that's not mentioned. So that's a very good point. In order to make it confusing and keep it vague, they did make those additions to it later on.